welcome along to the TurfCast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of this weekend's game against Everton at Turf Moor on Boxing Day at 3 p.m. That's if the game is on, of course. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, don't panic that you've seen this camera angle with me holding the phone. That usually means it's one of the pre-game shows where I send questions off to somebody and they send it back. It's not one of them type of shows. I have actually sat down with the Everton fan this week and had a proper chat. The only problem is I packed my camera away because I forgot to do the intro and I just couldn't be asked getting it back out. So it is a normal pre-game show. But of course, we don't know if the game's going to go ahead. So I'm getting this out as early as I possibly can. It's currently the 23rd of December as I'm recording this. It's took me a while to get an Everton fan to come on the show, simply because I was sending tweets out to the wrong Twitter account, but that's a different story. But we've got one. I've just done it. I've just recorded it. It's obviously, as you can tell, it's night time. I'm just quickly getting it done. I'm going to get it out there for you. So fingers crossed you enjoy it. If you are watching on YouTube, please smash that like button. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. And finally, let me know your predictions in the comments below what you think this game is going to be. If you think it's going to be postponed, just write postponed. I actually think it's going to be postponed. If I'm being honest with you, I can't see the game going ahead because Everton, of course, have already requested to the Premier League that it gets called off. They have currently rejected it, but I think Watford did the same thing, didn't they? They asked for the Premier League to call it off a few days before. The Premier League rejected it. Then on the day of the game, they just said, "Oh, look, lads, we've got more." So fingers crossed, Everton don't try and do that, but personally, I think they will. To be honest. So yeah, joining me this week is Cameron, and he's from the Everton newsfeed, Toffee Blues, and the YouTube channel. So here's what he has to say. Is this game actually going ahead? Because right now, the last I heard was Paul Joyce on Twitter, who is the Northern football correspondent for the Times and the Sunday Times, put a tweet out saying Everton have had a request to postpone their Boxing Day game at Burnley, rejected by the Premier League. The club has 5 cases of COVID within Rafa Benitez's squad, in addition to some injuries and illnesses. And then Paul Joyce was quoting Benitez, apparently Everton only have 9 senior outfield players, 3 goalkeepers, and then some youngsters available. Benitez was saying he doesn't think it's fair that the Everton one's been rejected. You'll probably know more about this than me because I presume, looking at the Liverpool Echo and some other local journalists and stuff. But what's the latest that you've seen?
The latest I've seen is that we're still going to, as of his press conference, it's still going to go ahead as of yet. I don't know if the club are going to press for it again to try and get it suspended. We've already had quite a bad injury season and a quite depleted squad. So the fact that 5, are out with COVID and only 9 outfield players, we played quite a young squad against Chelsea because of injuries. So I don't know. I don't know. I think it's still going to go ahead, and I know in the Premier League they're going to make it go ahead. But there needs to be some sort of transparency on why it's not going ahead, why it is going ahead, and why the likes of Leicester, for example, their game was against us was cancelled less than a week ago. Yet they were playing in the Carabao Cup and had enough players to field out a squad in that last night or the night before. I think it was last night. So I don't know how they got away with having the game called off, but then can go play in the cup against Liverpool and field a relatively good squad. They should have beat Liverpool. They really, slipped up there. So there needs to be some transparency. But in terms of this game, I think they're gonna insist on it happening. But I've got this horrible feeling that they'll then pull it, literally just before the game or the day before. Once fans have already bought their tickets, their travel arrangements. Wouldn't be surprised if the fans were outside Turf Moor before they called it off.
That's exactly what happened against Watford. So the Watford fans travelled up. I mean, it was Watford's fault. It was Watford that wanted it postponed. Exactly the same sort of thing happened. Watford asked the Premier League to postpone it a couple of days before. They said no, or we'll keep an eye on it, sort of thing. Then they travelled up. They stayed overnight in a hotel in Burnley, and then they went to the actual ground. There's like a picture. Or there was a picture on Twitter of them getting out the coach and going into the ground. And then it got called off. Fans were outside the ground literally waiting to go in. And the same thing happened against Aston Villa, opposite way around this time. But again, it was Villa that got the game called off, not us. Burnley fans had gone down to Villa. They're in the pubs ready to go on. I think that one got called off 2.5 hours before kickoff, whereas the Watford one was just under 2 hours. So I'm fully expecting to be getting in my car and hearing something like my phone going off saying don't bother, it's off. I agree with you though. It's like a few Burnley fans obviously have been whinging saying, "Oh, Everton should do this, Watford shouldn't do this, Villa shouldn't do this." Obviously, you're a fan and stuff, so you'll get the same frustrations as us. Like, you don't want to be, traveling up and getting told to turn around on a bank holiday, on Boxing Day of all days, do you? So I completely agree with you. There needs to be some transparency, but it's interesting. I don't know. But again, this is because of lack of transparency, like you said. I don't know what the protocol is. Is it a certain amount of players with COVID? Is it only a certain amount of senior players available? Because you only have 10 senior players available, obviously, including your goalkeeper. So then you would think that if it was amount of senior players, then yours would be called off. But maybe it's COVID cases because I think you've got 5. Maybe you need more than 5 or something like that. But then is there people who've been in close contact? Because obviously you think they were isolating. I don't know if you know any more than that.
Well, apparently, I don't know the exact, so I don't want to, guess, but it's so many outfield. If you've got so many outfield players and they take into account youth players if they've played a certain amount of football or been in the first team for a certain amount of time, because then they value that as first team players then.
Yeah.
I don't know if because he played the kids against Chelsea, maybe that's what they're saying, they're first team players now. But it's very weird because, like you said, it's only 5 cases, so if we didn't have the injuries, we'd still be able to put out a squad. It wouldn't be a very good squad, but added on top of the injuries, it's a bit like the Leeds situation. They had a couple of COVID cases, but mainly injuries is their biggest problem. But it was enough COVID cases to tip it over. I thought we would fall in line with the Leeds thing, where it's like they've got more actual injuries than COVID cases, but combined they've just not got enough. It begs a question because if we've got 9 outfield players fit or whatever, our bench is going to be pretty horrific. Bearing in mind it's not just the 10 on the the 11 on the field. You need your bench of subs as well.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know how they're ruling it. I'm really shocked that we got ours rejected with the 5 COVID cases because there were rumours it was going around Goodison Park anyway. There were rumours that Rafa Benitez had it. Then he had his booster. He tweeted and he was at his press conference, so he can't have it. But there were rumours that it was going around the squad. We just thought it was only at the manager that had it. But
yeah, it's interesting to see what'll happen. I'm with you. I don't think they'll call it off the day before because obviously the day before is Christmas Day, so I presume no one's going to be in the office. So even if Everton do ring the Premier League, no one's going to pick it up. But maybe on Boxing Day, which again, you'll have people waking up early, getting over to Burnley early to go on the game. So it's not right. The fans need to be thought of better. And there does need to be more transparency. But in a slightly positive way for you, obviously, like you said, you played a few youngsters against Chelsea. A decent result. All right, Chelsea, they're off the boil a little bit, but, it doesn't matter. Going to Stamford Bridge and picking up a point is a good result. Obviously, Burnley did the same not so long ago. And it was a youngster that actually scored for you, weren't it? I can't remember his name. So I think maybe your kids are actually quite decent. I don't know if the Premier League takes that into account. They probably don't. Like I say, it's probably the amount of experience they had. But I guess if your youngsters can get a point at Stamford Bridge, you might be a little bit confident about maybe the youngsters doing quite decent at Turf Moor as well.
Yeah, like the lad that scored, Bramthwaite, was he's a centre back, and our defence is quite on the sort of backbones anyway. With Luca Dean reportedly falling out of favour with the manager.
Yeah,
he said today he will, unless something happens on the day, he will play. He said that last time, and then told us the day before that Luca Dean had called in ill. So whether or not that'll happen, and we've signed a new left back, so it looks like he's going in the January because of the relationship between those two. I think he will play just because if he's not got COVID, we're really low on the ground. But Bramthwaite did play well. He was a bit weird. He went to Blackburn last year, didn't really kick it off, sort of thing. But he's got a lot of potential. We got him from Carlisle. He's really good. And then we've got a couple of others. Ellis Sims and Lewis Dobbin both played up front during the game, obviously subbed on for each other. They a little bit harder, didn't see a lot from them, but it was, it's the European champions. I wasn't expecting them to, tear Chelsea up, and Chelsea are a very good defensive team. So it was going to be hard to break them down. But it does, yeah, you're right. It does. There is positives in that. And Everton fans have been dying to see a couple of the young lads get games, especially when we're playing Solomon Rondon up front, who runs like he's wearing Timberlands. So Everton fans will be quite happy to see one of the young strikers back in the fold again for another game, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. And last I saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he could be back for this game, which is obviously a massive bonus for you and a massive negative for us. If I want one player to miss this game, it will be on your side. It will be Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But it's looking like he's back.
Yeah, he's one of the players. I think Benitez said it. He was like, he is one of the players that can play, but he was like, obviously, I'm not going to play him for the full night. I'm not going to rush him back. He's just come back from his injury that's had him out pretty much, good chunk of the season already. So far, about 3/4 of the time since the season started. So I don't think he wants to give him the full 90. I think if we have the two young lads fit, and they don't have COVID, he's going to play them, and maybe Dominic Calvert-Lewin will come on for like if we need him, or a little bit of a run out, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to get his fitness. But I can't see him playing him for the full 90 or starting him unless he has to, purely because he doesn't want to rush him back. It showed last season when he was injured, but it shows more under Rafa Benitez. Without him, we are in big trouble. Our goals dry up. Our style of play is all built around him. It's long ball. A big lad needs to be able to control the ball and bring others into play. It's all built around him. So when we don't have him in the squad, it's a bit mad, but we still try and play the same way, even though we don't have him, and it just doesn't work. And then we're always on the back foot then. So I don't think he wants to risk him, because if he gets injured and he's out for another 2 months, it leaves us in a bit of a desperate situation, because we don't want to slip further down the table, because then you start getting into a fight you don't want to get into. And it also probably would mean that in 2 months' time, without Calvert-Lewin, if the results didn't start to pick up, he'd probably lose his job security.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, you mentioned Benitez there and stuff, and obviously, I think you was on the show for the game at Goodison, obviously, which you ended up winning. But I remember at the time, Benitez was still quite new, because it was quite early in the season, weren't it? I can't remember how early, but it was still quite early. I was asking you at the time about Benitez and your thoughts on the appointment and stuff like that. And I think you were saying you want to back him, but you're a little bit unsure at the minute. Of course, it has pretty much... I think I use the term sour. I don't think it's as bad at the minute, because I follow a few Everton fans, obviously, including your page, and I used to see a lot of tweets and stuff come up from Everton fans basically slagging Benitez off and things like that. That seems to have dried up a little bit now, or I haven't seen any anyway. But what are your thoughts on the Benitez managerial situation at the minute? Because, like I said, you weren't too sure at first, were you?
No. I mean, I'm sure now, but it's only gone in. I don't like him personally. I think he talks, not just because of who he is and his links. I think the style of play is dire. I think at times, obviously, people are going to say, oh, but he's had a lot of injuries, and he has. And I'm taking that into account. He missed Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin and Decore at one point, all at the same time. But his insistence to play the likes of Solomon Rondon, for one point he was zonal marking for corners. We can't do that. Marco Silva tried it, and that saw him out of a job. It's for whatever reason doesn't work at Everton, and he's starting to come out with silly things like, I know the city. That doesn't wash with Everton fans. I know Carlo Ancelotti said he loved Liverpool, and that did, but that's Carlo Ancelotti. He could say, I'm going to kick your nan, and Everton fans will still have that little bit of, it's Carlo Ancelotti, let him have it. But Rafa Benitez going, I know the city. So the bus drivers around Liverpool. That doesn't mean they should be in the dugout. And then he goes, we run more. We run more because we never have the ball. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we're running and we're not just standing there going, okay then. But, running stats, sort of like, you got to take them into the subjective. You got to take them with a bit, a pinch of salt. If you're running more without the ball, that's because you're chasing the game for 90 minutes. I don't like him. I think, but I mean, there's deeper problems at Everton than Rafa Benitez. But I do agree that I think he's got a bit. So, like the Arsenal result, I think saved him massively. That was really good. Drawing against Chelsea has massively, saved him a little bit. I mean, we did lose to Crystal Palace in the middle of that, and then I think genuinely having our game against Leicester cancelled has helped him as well, just because out of sight, out of mind type of mentality. Depending on how this goes, if we lose, the heat will be straight back on him. If we win, he'll have a bit more breathing space. If it's called off again, out of sight, out of mind. But My main issue with him, when I think I might have said it when I was on, was he's only a couple of bad results away from the fans really starting. And I think we've won like 2 games in the last 2 months. That type of form is, one, relegation style form. That's really desperation levels. And 2, that's going to anger fans. And it was a man that wasn't, he was already chasing an uphill battle. Now we've just managed to make the hill steeper for him.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Do you think he's going to see the season out, or do you think he'll get sacked before the end of the year?
My prediction was that he'd have been gone by now. And I do think Leicester had not saved his job, but I think it's saved him a lot of heat. Obviously, Marcel Brands has gone since then, the director of football at Everton. I thought Benitez would go before him. I don't think so. And if he does last the season, he'll be gone by. He'll do the classic Everton 18 months. He'll be gone by next Christmas at the most. Otherwise, he'll be one of our longer managers in the last couple of years, which is mental to think about and really does show the problems at Everton. But I don't see him managing to keep his job much longer. I think once he gets a bit of money to spend and the injuries are back, there's sort of no more excuses for him to fall back on. The owner came out on TalkSport and said, he's had a lot of injuries. Once Dominic Calvert-Lewin's back, and obviously the COVID situation's not helpful, but then we're in a better space. If he has the second half of the season like he's had the first, I think he'll be gone. He's got no excuse to fall on.
Fair enough. Do you want the owner to give him money? Everton as a club will have a bit more money than Burnley, but for Burnley, it's like if I had a manager that I didn't trust, I'd be like, right, get rid of him now and give the new guy some money. But I guess you've got a bit more of a cushion, haven't you?
Yeah, although with this summer we couldn't spend because of financial fair play, because we'd absolutely scattergun silly amounts of money up the wall on silly. We spent like over 500 million, and we can't. We've got 9 outfield players to show for it. Which shows. And even then, if everyone's fully fit, there's only about, I think, 2-3 players that people outside of Everton, other Premier League teams would say, I'd take him, and then a lot they go, indifferent. But there's only like, I'd say 2 maybe that people look at and go, I really want them, and they're Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Luca Dean as well, actually, I think he's quite hot property as well. But like, that's what we've got to show for the money we've spent. So sort of like whoever we have, we never spend money well anyway. But ideally, I'd have liked us to have a director of football model and use it properly, so he spends the money. I think giving Rafa Benitez full reign. He's linked with Longstaff from Newcastle. He's been linked with proper Benitez signings that I don't think will settle in. And if he is gonna, say now if I am right and he does last at most the 18 months, who's going to want to come in and play with players that are another managers? If we had a director of football who, tried to implement some sort of style, you could get a manager that plays to the best of those players. But if you let the manager have free reign, it's going to be a man coming in using another man's tools at the end of it, which will push us back another 2 years.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you think Everton can achieve then this season? Because at the minute, you're 14th. There's been a bit of chat of relegation, but you'll be completely 100% okay because you need Burnley to start winning games yet, and we do not look like doing that. Neither do Newcastle, and neither do Norwich. I've seen people say everybody all the way up until 11th, Crystal Palace are currently in danger, but that's because they're not watching us week in, week out. We've been absolutely dreadful. I can't see us winning the amount of games. I'm currently in the process of. I'm panicking, but I'm not going to say we're down just yet. Ask me again on January the 15th because we've got winnable games. But obviously, one of them winnable games was Watford that got called off. Another one was Villa. Although I probably thought we would have got beat at Villa, but it's not one of the big 6. So I think any game really is winnable. Obviously, Everton is another one. Whether that gets called off, I'm not sure. So I might have to sort of like reserve that and push it back till all these games have been played. But you're 14th in the table. I think it was 9 points away from us. You're on 19, we're on 11, 8 points away from us. So you're not in any real immediate danger for me. I can't see you being anywhere near the drop zone. But is it just a season of sort of like staying around 14th, 15th, 16th and then pushing on next season, or when Benitez goes? What do you think's the immediate future for Everton?
It's hard to see because the table's, relatively close as well. If we win, we go back up to like 10th, I think it is. Like you were saying, I don't think we will get relegated. I think I don't think you like Burnley will either. To be fair, I think he'll pull it out somehow. Dyche will pull it out somehow. But
Crossed, mate.
I think Newcastle and Norwich are the two definites for me, and then Leeds, because Leeds look a bit lost at the minute as well. But yeah, I said it at the start of this season on our channel. Got called a bit negative, but I think we'll finish between 10th and 12th.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't think that, I said it at the start, I don't think that's obviously the manager, who the manager is and the style we've been playing makes me a bit more irked about it. But I don't think that's an awful start for your first season. Bearing in mind, he had I think he's only spent 1.5 million. Finishing 10th or 12th in your first season with us and the state our squad's in is pretty commendable.
Yeah. Focusing back on this game then, obviously we've mentioned the COVID status and a few injuries. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's back. Is there any other main headlines in terms of injuries? Like I presume Richarlison's okay at the minute?
The last I heard, he's not okay. He, I mean, because the Leicester game happened, it's sort of that little bit harder to sort of, predict how fast they'll recover. But he had muscle issues off the Crystal Palace game. And he came off. And from that game as well, Seamus Coleman had issues. Andros Townsend fractured his foot. He's going to see a specialist. I mean, maybe Seamus Coleman's back now, maybe, because he's had, although I was going to say he's had 2 weeks, but the fixtures are that close together. Normally they're a week away, aren't they? But because it's Christmas period, that you can go, they're 2 weeks away, and it's actually only like 4 days away from the last game. They're that close. I have this feeling Richarlison won't be fit. So I think we'll be missing him. We'll be missing Townsend, which he's gone off the ball slightly, but he's still involved with he's got our most involved goals, or second most involved with 9. So he's still, a vital part of that. And there were rumours Damari Gray was hurt. Hopefully he's back. But it's a bit hard to say because Everton are keeping their, we don't even know who the players with COVID are, I don't think. They're keeping their cards very close to their chest. I think mainly just banking on the Premier League, writing the game off. But as fans, we're really struggling to pitch who the missing people are.
I think there's something like there's some sort of like protocol where if they don't want to be named, I don't think they can be named. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I think there's something in place with that. But it's interesting to hear how many injuries you have got. Obviously, then COVID's it. I'm surprised. Obviously, you'd say Calvert-Lewin's just come back. You're saying Townsend's a bit of a myth that he's missing, but obviously he scored that worldie against us, so we'll be glad not to see him there. And Richarlison, as frustrating as I think Everton fans can probably find him at times, is just class, and he can change a game. So obviously we're kind of hoping the game goes ahead at the minute with the situation that you're in, because we've been that bad this season. This is our only hope of getting 3 points, I think, at the minute against you boys. But fingers crossed it goes ahead anyway. But what sort of lineup and formation then are you expecting from Benitez? Obviously, we're expecting Calvert-Lewin to be back, but then you've just rattled off all these. I mean, I guess it's quite difficult, as you've just said, to predict, isn't it? Because you don't even know who the 5 with COVID are, and then so you could be saying somebody right now, and they could be, stuck at home with 2 tissues at the nose, not knowing whether they're going to be playing next week or whatever. So, if you can sort of guess what sort of lineup Benitez is going to do, feel free. But what sort of how do you expect Everton to play is probably a better question.
Not the same as we did when we played you earlier on in the season. Not like that. I think we'll play in the 4-4-1-1. Just because he's insistent on that. Which is one of his the criticisms I mentioned. There's been times where we needed an extra man in midfield and he won't do it, or he's playing every man and his dog in that number 10 role, and we don't have a number 10 at the club because he hounded one out the club in James Rodriguez, and the other one we just don't talk about. So I mean, he'll go for the 4-4-1-1. Who he sticks there, if Damari Gray's fit, he'll go there. He stuck Townsend there before. Andre Gomez could play there. I think, depending on who the 5 are with the injuries, I think it is really hard. I think we might see that Onyango that came on, the youngster who came on for Chelsea in centre mid, because I'm willing to bet out the 5 that are there, one of them will be a centre mid, either Allen or Decore, just because Everton look. type thing. I think that Branthwaite might get a game because, again, I would bet that one of the 5 is a centre back. I don't. There's a couple of players who I know aren't very keen on the vaccine stuff, so that they could have it, and that's another centre mid out the club gone. I think we're going to see a lot of youngsters. I think that Onyango might get his full-time debut. I think Branthwaite will play, and I think Lewis Dobbin or Ellis Sims, whoever impressed him the most during the Chelsea game, will play up front. And I think if those 2 are fit, he's not going to start Calvert-Lewin. Other than that, I mean, it's like playing Minesweeper trying to guess them. It's really tough.
I realise that halfway through the question, or that way you can't really guess, actually, can you? But obviously, we'll sign off then with some predictions. I'll give mine first. For the first time in a while, well, you know what? I'm going to predict that the game gets called off. That's my first prediction. I genuinely believe it will get called off. And if it goes ahead with the amount of injuries that you have and the COVID illnesses, if we do not pull the result out of the bag against a team who has been in relatively poor form, apart from, recent pickups against Chelsea and Arsenal, then we deserve to go down at the end of the day. If you're going to put out some under 17s and we can't beat them, then we deserve to go down. And I think it might kickstart our season. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We need something to kickstart our season anyway. Weirdly enough, that 5-0, 5-1 Boxing Day game a few years ago, that kickstarted our season because they went away from that. Because Burnley, I walked away from that game feeling like, right, we're down. We're definitely down. We play like that. We play like that all season. But they went away. They had a big meeting. He dropped Joe Hart, stuck Tom Eaton in, and that changed the season, and they ended up staying up. So fingers crossed Everton can be the catalyst again, but this time with a win and not a 5-0 drubbing, 5-1, whatever it was. I blanked it out of my mind. But what are your predictions then for this weekend's game? Yeah, Sunday, Boxing Day, innit? This Christmas's game.
I mean, my mind is telling me that we could very well lose this because of the state of the squad and, half of it being wiped out. I mean, I must admit my first prediction is the same as yours. I think the game will probably get called off.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, the optimist in me, because I can't bet against my team, is going to say 1-1 draw. But my mind is telling me we might see a defeat here. But I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw just to stay optimistic. I can't bet against them.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm like that, to be fair. I think I predicted 1-1 at Goodison earlier this season, whereas deep down I'm thinking, we've been crap this season. That were a weird game, that one, weren't it? Because we got the goal from a set piece. I think it was the zonal marking issue that you mentioned earlier, which I'm kind of fingers crossed, we can get another goal from it because we're quite strong at set pieces, so fingers crossed. But then I can't remember who you brought on. Was it Gomez? You brought a sub on, and it just completely changed the game. But that has been the story of our season. We've got in front. Someone's brought a midfielder on, Lallana for Brighton, someone else, and then it just changes the game because we are so weak in midfield, and that just completely turned the game around. And you went on and won it quite comfortably in the end. But I remember when we went 1-0 up, the Everton fans were getting on the back. I was thinking, hey, this could be the first win here, but obviously not. So it was a bit of a weird game, that one.
Yeah, it was, and like you said, it was Gomez. They brought on. He was playing I don't know why he was playing a five back. He did it a couple of times this season. One of them being QPR that saw us out of the cup. I think that was enough for him to realise that's not going to work at Everton and to pack it in. But we went for like this 4-4-1-1, although it did seem a lot more like a 4-4-2. I must admit, and that changed the game, like you said. Andros Townsend got his worldie. Damari Gray got one. Michael Keane got one. It was just Decore was just running the park. It was a really good switch up. I think the main thing is that he just after the Southampton game as well, we went a goal behind before half time. And he must have yelled at them because we came out and won. I think he's just sort of got the mentality across. Switched, obviously changed it, but he's got the mentality across to them that the game's not done till the 90. Type thing, and just told them to carry on. And I also massively think that the Everton crowd, Goodison Park, really helped as well. I had a couple of friends who were working for TV companies that were there, who said, and a friend that went to watch in the Burnley end, and they said the atmosphere was just amazing once Townsend's rocket had gone in. That was it. And then after that, I think that does help because I think we scored all 3 of our goals in like 6 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it was so quick. As soon as the sub came on, it was just bang, bang, bang. You were like, right, well, we've got beat then. We're winning the game. Next thing you know, we're out of it. It's like, oh, that was good. But like I said, I do remember the atmosphere being quite decent. But at first, when we scored, there was a lot of negativity, and I thought maybe we can capitalise on this. But then when you've got someone that can just stick it at top bin from a million miles out, there's not really much you can do about that. Then goals change games, and it went on from there, didn't it, really? But we'll wrap it up here. Just before we do go, do you want to let everyone know where they can find the Everton news feed, the Toffee Blues podcast?
It's at Everton Newsfeed on Twitter or the Toffee Blues. You can find all our content on there. It's the Toffee Blues on YouTube as well. You can find it all on there.
Happy days, nice one. And thanks for joining us on TurfCast. And fingers crossed the game goes ahead. Obviously, you'll probably be thinking, fingers crossed it done. I'm just one of them. If I'm not going down to Turf on Boxing Day, I'll be a bit like, what am I doing myself? You know what I mean? I'm always at a game, so it'd just be really weird to be out of a game. But fingers crossed it goes ahead. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure.